Hello everyone, welcome back to Crafting with Slavie, where we make cards and other paper crafts. In today's card video, we're going to make this adorable card that I made for a friend. It features a Lawn Fawn's Let's Go Nuts, and I stamped these out on Strathmore Bristol smooth cardstock using Lawn Fawn's jet black ink. I did stamp it out twice, as you can see there on the right, and then I moved on to my sentiment. The sentiments are on just regular 80-pound cardstock, and what I did is I die cut 2 of the fancy wavy banners, and I'm using the happy birthday from WAVY sayings to heat emboss the sentiment onto these banners. These are products that I just received in a recent unboxing, which I'm going to link here so you can go check it out. I've made a couple projects with the different things that I've gotten in that unboxing, which I'm super happy about. They're oldies but goodies. Okay, now you'll notice that there's a lot of stuff here, so we'll kind of go through everything. We'll start off with these. So this is the Lift the Flap tree backdrop, and I did die cut 2 of these panels. I wanted to use the Swish and Pop because we all know I'm obsessed. And I removed the middle tree from this panel because otherwise it was going to block the squirrel too much jumping through the trees. And then I proceeded to take the other panel and I just cut off the frame on either side. Later on, I do come back and I cut off the remaining frame, but that's after I've done all of the ink blending. So here we go. We're gonna do some distress ink blending today. This is dried marigold and tea dye, which you wouldn't think to put together, but I actually really love this color combination. I think it gives it a really nice, warm, kind of like a tanned look, which I really appreciate. The embossing powder that I used for this sentiment is Vintage Pearl, and it's from Ranger. Alright, now when that was done, I kept the same inks out and I used those to blend the forward panel of the trees. So there's going to be like a forward and a backward panel because this is a very heavily dimensional card, because I can't help it. I think there's like 3 layers of dimension on this card. So I went ahead and I just tried to make the trees kind of look natural, so the highlight is in the middle. I also use the same colors on the pull tab itself for the Swish and Pop and the indicator as well. So I used tea dye on the arrow and dried marigold with a little tea dye on the pull tab. Now for the background trees, I am using Vintage Photo and Gathered Twigs, which is my go-to. I do like this color combination. I think it creates a really nice dark looking tree. And as you can see, I have 4 trees in the background because if I lined it up perfectly, then you wouldn't be able to see the background trees because they would of course line up with the front panel. But I wanted to have tree stuff back there. Okay. So these, I have 4 panels. 2 of them are cut out with puffy cloud borders, which is the one on the left, and 2 of them are cut out with the, I didn't write it down, but I do believe that it is the GRASSY HILLSIDE borders. And for the first round, I ink blended them. This is for the foreground ones, which are a little bit shorter, so you can see everything through them. It was Twisted Citron and Mowed Lawn. And then for the ones that are farther back, which are a little bit larger, it's Mowed Lawn and Rustic Wilderness, which I'm really loving for when you have shadowy looking grass or tree canopies. Yeah, so I highly recommend. If you don't have Rustic Wilderness, get it, it's amazing. And then I took another A2 size panel and with the stitched borders, and that's how I cut out the other 4, by the way, in case you're ever wondering. And I used pine needles to ink blend on those so that you could, like, it's kind of like you're looking into the forest and it's all dark back there. Then I cut out 2 scrap pieces of paper to go as a backing because I also wanted to use the flaps. I didn't want to just shut them. And I ink blended those with Vintage Photo and Gathered Twigs as well. And I did go really dark because of course all of my squirrels are going to be hanging out back there. Okay, so on to the coloring. Pretty simple coloring today. There wasn't a lot of images to color, and the ones that I did color, they were mostly the same colors just repeated over and over again. I probably could have not used as many squirrels as I did today, but they ended up fitting and I quite liked the way that it turned out, so it was okay. The other card, which I will eventually link maybe here, that uses the other set of the squirrels from Let's Go Nuts. I didn't go as dark on those squirrels as I did on these guys, but I used the same color combinations, which I'm thinking are very quickly becoming my favorite for these little guys. They're just so cute. So it's the E30s from COPIC, and it's funny because in this card I felt like they blended better than they did in the other one, but it's the same paper, nothing is different, it's the same markers, so I don't know. I'm thinking it might have just been user error. The one difference here is that when it comes to doing the darkening up of the dark spots, the shadows, I do go all the way back to the E35, and for the other card I only go up to an E33. So I go over it in E35 initially, but then I don't go back over it with E35. Or sorry, I think it's E37. Anyways, moving on to the leaves here. So these leaves, of course, are from Let's Go Nuts, but I saw a card not too long ago on the Facebook group that used these guys to accentuate a canopy or something like that, and I just thought it was a great idea. I have 3 different colors of leaves here, and when I did the other card I did forget about the 3rd color, but it's okay because it worked out. I loved this look. If you have not played around with this, I do recommend it. It really took the card from like okay to phenomenal. The fact that I had these little spurts of detail in the leaves that I included. So something for you to consider. So here I am cutting off the rest of the border here. And the reason why I did that is because I realized with all the dimension that I wanted to add, I didn't want the bulk of that extra paper on the edge. So then I went ahead and I adhered my back canopy for my trees. And of course, again, this is the cloudy, puffy clouds border, pardon me. And I put that in the back, and then I started adhering my trees. I didn't want the grass to go in front because I figured the Swish and Pop could kind of hang out on top of the grass. So I'm using my front panel, and you can tell that there's a huge contrast. You won't be able to tell how big the contrast is once the card is put together, because I was a little worried about that when I first started assembling, but it ended up working out really great. So I'm using it as a guide so I can perfectly, well, not perfectly, but I can kind of measure out, eyeball that 1/4 inch frame at the top and bottom. It doesn't have to be perfect. And yeah, okay, so when that was done, I took out my Tim Holtz paper trimmer here, which I am newly obsessed with. For those of you who follow my channel, you know that I just got it recently, and I can't stop cutting things with it. It's a really nice trimmer, and I actually use it for my I have these magnet sheets that I cut apart myself for when I store my dies, and I use it for that as well because it's, to a point, it is self-sharpening, so it's a lot more economical for me than buying replacements for my paper trimmer, the Fiskars one that I have, which is of course linked below. And then as always for the Swish and Pop, I use my T-square ruler to line everything up. Now this card is filled with mistakes. This is the first one. So obviously, you might be thinking it's obvious. I didn't at the time that I was making this. That back panel I just created is filled with catch points for the acetate. So as I was playing with this, I realized this because it was getting stuck on those limbs there. and there and just everywhere. And I didn't want that to be a hindrance. So what I did is I took a scrap piece of paper, just an 80-pound cardstock. I took my back grassy hillside there so I could measure out where the shortest part of the hillside was, and I trimmed off the excess. So I've got the it is a 5.5 by however much I need panel. Sorry, I didn't measure. And I attached the mechanism to that, thinking I was going to pop that up on foam squares. So then I just adhered the back panel directly onto my card base. And then I started assembling my Swish and Pop. So I put I put foam tape on the back of the new Swish and Pop panel, sort of, that we're gonna hide behind the grass. And when I was doing my little measuring for the front, I do have a more detailed, well, I guess I could just go over it here, but you want to make sure that you're strategically placing your adhesive so that it doesn't block the function of the mechanism. And when I was putting the stopper on that, because you need a stopper there so that it doesn't go any much farther than that, it was a little bit insecure from the back, so I also added a piece of tape there. So if you're going to do this, just make sure you do that for yourself so that you have some stability. And then I temporarily adhered the pull tab to the back panel so I could measure out where to put the pull tab hole, and I put that through all of my pieces. In a previous card video, which I will link here because it's adorable, I adhered it ahead of time. I adhered the panels that go in front of the pull tab ahead of time. In this case, I just cut out the green one there and adhered it to the back because it didn't need to, I guess, match the rest of the card for me in this case, so that it was a little bit more obvious that it was there because the pull tab is also the same color as the frame. I hope that makes sense. I'm not just confusing you even more. Sorry if I am. I have a tendency to do that sometimes. And when this was done, I went ahead and I started attaching everything to my panel. So I started off with just this part of the mechanism, and I believe the next thing that we do is going to be the squirrel. Oh, no, we're going to attach the grass. Okay, now a note on the grass. I should have put adhesive on the back panel, like on the sides and the top first, because I had an idea of where everything was going to be, so I didn't have to wait to attach the grass to do that. So when I was attaching the rest of the panel, I popped this up because, you know, me and a dimension, love it. And I attached the canopy as well as the grassy border on the bottom here. And here I go with the canopy. Now I'm only attaching it on the frame. And the reason for that is because I wanted the option to be able to tuck in my critters and those leaves and stuff. So yeah, and I didn't adhere it all the way because I wanted to make sure that once the canopy was on there, you could still see the squirrel, and you couldn't see the squirrel. So I ended up peeling it off even though it was adhered with the glue. It hadn't had long enough to dry and set that I didn't have the ability to take it off like that. And I played around with it to make sure that it fit, and then I trimmed it again. I think I ended up taking off almost another inch of the acetate, so that's to give you an idea of how much adjustment you might need to take. And then the trees in the front actually cover him up really well, so you can kind of see him a little bit, but not too badly. And then this is me now trying to put that adhesive there because I need a double layer. So now I need to figure out how to get that second layer of foam tape underneath the grass. So do yourself a favor. If you're going to do it this way, just make sure you put those 2 layers of foam tape on there first. Now I'm folding this fancy wavy banners die, and in that other video that I do subsequently, I use the same banner die, and I actually kind of adhered together with foam squares, and I like that look a lot better than this one. If I could go back and do this card again, that's what I would do. Now for the flip top, how do you want to call this? Anyways, lift the flap, there we go. I adhered the images to the panel first, and then I put it in the back there so that they are flush, and I made sure to adhere them really well so that it doesn't become, and actually that's why it's popped up, so it doesn't become a catch point for our acrobatic squirrel. And here I am kind of trying to figure out how to adhere this banner. Again, if I had used foam squares or even just glue to glue it down, I didn't need the extra dimension, but it ended up working out okay. But I wanted to make sure that it was in a flat position for when it got mailed out. And then I started adhering all my little critters, and you'll notice that my front panel is still not adhered to my back panel. I think this is the first time in all of my card making days that I have not done that. So now I'm going to start adhering it, and then I'm going to finish it off by attaching the final leaves just to figure out placement. I did attach the squirrels with a mixture of 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch foam squares, and they are the regular size as well as the thin size of foam square. So I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed today's card video. It is one of my favorites that I've done in a long time, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.